The Montana wind carried more than cold that November morning. It carried the weight of 15 years, the ghost of choices made and roads not taken, and the low rumble of a phone that had not rung since the day Garrett Stone decided he was better off alone. He stood in his workshop with grease on his hands and silence in his bones, working chrome on a 1987 Harley Panhead, the way a monk might work prayer beads. Muscle memory and meditation. The rhythm of wrench against bolt. The slow transformation of tarnished metal into mirror shine. The bike gleamed under a single overhead bulb, perfect in every mechanical detail, except for one critical flaw. It had not moved in 15 years. Just like the man who maintained it, the machine was built for motion, but had forgotten how to move forward. The workshop walls told stories Garrett had stopped reading. Photographs yellowed at the edges, faces frozen in moments when the world had made sense. A Hell's Angels patch, the death's head grinning in faded reds and whites pinned to corkboard like a butterfly specimen. Newspaper clippings from another lifetime when Garrett Reaper Stone had been a name that carried weight in the Brotherhood. National President, the apex. 24 years wearing that patch was something close to pride, leading men who would have bled for him, building something that felt like family, because his real family had drowned when he was 6 years old. Now at 67, he wore nothing but solitude and the scars underneath his flannel shirt. Scars that mapped a life lived hard and fast and ultimately alone. The phone cut through the workshop's silence like a knife through old leather. Garrett stared at it. The device sat on his workbench between a parts catalog and a coffee mug that had gone cold hours ago. Nobody called this number. He had made certain of that when he disconnected from everyone who had ever mattered. This phone existed for one reason, only a lifeline he had installed in case of emergency, in case the one person he had left in the world ever needed him. In 15 years, it had never rung. His hand hovered over the receiver, grease-stained fingers trembling in a way they never had when facing down rival clubs or federal agents, or the kind of violence that left permanent marks. He picked up. The voice on the other end was small, fragile. Everything Evelyn May Stone had never been in the 89 years she had walked this earth. Garrett, baby, it's Grandma. The wrench slipped from his other hand and hit concrete with a sound like a gunshot in a cathedral. Evie, I'm sorry to call. I know we haven't. I know it's been... Her voice cracked. Not with age, with something worse. Fear. Evelyn Stone did not do fear. This was the woman who had buried a husband killed at Normandy and raised 3 sons alone through poverty and doubt. This was the woman who had taken in a 6-year-old boy after his parents drowned at Lake Tahoe and turned him into a man through sheer force of will and unconditional love. Fear was not in her vocabulary. What happened? Garrett's voice was steady despite the fact that his entire world had just shifted on its axis. I need you, baby. I need my grandson. 20 minutes later, Garrett's truck was tearing down the mountain road, the panhead secured in the bed, everything he owned left behind without a second thought. Montana disappeared in his rearview mirror like a dream he was finally waking from. The drive from Montana to Nevada was 8 hours of highway and memory. Garrett kept the radio off. Silence was better. Silence did not make him think about the last time he had seen his grandmother. Except silence was exactly what made him remember. 15 years ago, Reno, Nevada, a different man. The memory came whether he wanted it or not. Evie's small house on the edge of town, the one she had bought with her husband's life insurance money and kept immaculate through decades of hard work. Garrett standing in her kitchen, fresh from a run that had ended in blood and federal warrants. The kind of night that made men disappear. But it was not the federal heat that had driven him away. It was Thomas, his baby brother, 35 years old and dead in a warehouse shootout that Garrett had led him into. Thomas, who had followed Garrett into the Angels despite every warning. Thomas, who had died because Garrett had not protected him. Thomas, whose blood was on Garrett's hands as surely as if he had pulled the trigger himself. He had stood in Evie's kitchen that night, unable to meet her eyes, waiting for her to say what he already knew, that he had killed her grandson, that he had destroyed their family, that she would never forgive him. But Evie had not said any of that. She had stood at her sink, hands gripping the counter, 84 years old and still stronger than most men half her age. She had not turned around. "You need to leave," she had said quietly. "I know." "No, you need to leave because if you stay here carrying that guilt, it will kill you. And I've buried enough of my family." Her voice had been steady, too steady, the steadiness of someone holding back an ocean of grief. "Evie, I'm so, don't, just don't. I can't hear you apologize for being alive when Thomas is dead." She had turned then. Her eyes were dry. That was somehow worse than tears. "You think this is your fault. You think you should have saved him. But Thomas made his own choices. Garrett, he followed you because he loved you, because he wanted to be like his big brother. That's not on you. That's life. That's love. That's what family does. But I let him into, you led him nowhere he didn't choose to go." Evie's voice had hardened. "And I won't let you turn his death into your martyrdom. You want to honor Thomas, then live. Live well. Live fully. Don't you dare waste the life he'd give anything to still have." Garrett had left that night, rode north, and never looked back. Pride and shame were a hell of a combination. They could make a man choose the open road over the only family he had left. They could make 15 years disappear like water in desert sand. The present came rushing back as Garrett's truck crossed the Nevada state line. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Evie had called. After everything, after 15 years of silence that had been his choice, his cowardice, his failure, she had called. Because she needed him. Because someone had hurt her. The old reaper stirred in his chest, the part of him that had led the Hells Angels for nearly a quarter century. The part that understood violence as a language and consequences as gospel. Not yet, he told himself. Not until you know what you're dealing with. But his foot pressed harder on the accelerator anyway. Reno General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperate prayers. Garrett had been here before years ago, sitting vigil for brothers who had not made it through the night. The institutional lighting, the hushed voices, the sense that life and death were negotiating in rooms you could not see. It all came back in a rush. He found Evie in room 247. The sight of her stopped him in the doorway like he had walked into a wall. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. They had her hooked up to monitors, an IV in her paper-thin arm, the soft beep of her heartbeat filling the room like a clock counting down. Her left arm was bandaged from wrist to elbow. Burns. Her face was pale, drawn, and for the first time in Garrett's memory, Evelyn Stone looked every one of her 89 years. "You gonna stand there all day, or you going to come say hello?" Her voice was weak but clear, the same voice that had read him bedtime stories and taught him to stand up for himself and told him he was loved every single day of his childhood. Garrett stepped inside and closed the door behind him. His throat was tight. "How you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck and then set on fire?" She smiled faintly, but I felt worse. He pulled a chair to her bedside and sat. Up close, he could see the faint scars on her hands, decades of hard work captured in weathered skin. The silver hair that had once been auburn. The eyes that were still sharp despite the pain. "Tell me what happened." Evie was quiet for a moment. Then she told him everything. It had started 2 months ago. Small things at first. Comments from a group of young men who came into the Silver Point diner where she had worked for 40 years. They would sit in her section and make jokes about her age, her slowness, the way her hands shook when she poured coffee. She had ignored it. After 89 years on this earth, Evie had learned that some people were just mean for the sport of it, but it had escalated. The leader was a young man named Braden Caldwell, mid-20s, expensive clothes, the kind of face that had never known a real consequence. He and his friends had started coming in daily, specifically requesting Evie's section, making increasingly cruel comments, calling her grandma an old hag, complaining loudly about slow service even when she was running herself ragged, leaving pennies as tips after running her in circles for an hour. The diner manager, a woman named Linda, had tried to intervene, but Braden's father was Marcus Caldwell, United States Senator Marcus Caldwell, and Senator Caldwell sat on the board of the corporation that owned the diner's parent company. Linda had been told in no uncertain terms to let it go, so it had continued. And 2 days ago, it had turned violent. Evie's voice shook as she described it. Braden and his friends at their usual corner booth, her bringing them lunch, Braden sticking his foot out as she walked past with a full tray. The crash, the hot soup spilling across her arm and shoulder, soaking through her uniform, burning through skin, the laughter as she lay on the floor, the $5 bill thrown down next to her like she was a beggar. She had been brought to this hospital. First-degree burns, they had said, painful but not life-threatening. What they had not said, what the young doctor had told Garrett privately in the hallway, was that Evie's heart had nearly given out from the stress and pain. She has a pre-existing condition, Dr. Patel had explained. Her heart is weak, has been for years. The combination of physical trauma and acute stress triggered a cardiac event. Not a full heart attack, but close. Another incident like this could kill her. Garrett had absorbed this information with the cold clarity of a man who had spent decades making tactical assessments. Evie's heart was failing. She could not survive another attack. And the man who had caused this one was still out there untouched, protected by money and power. When Evie finished her story, Garrett sat in silence. The monitor beeped. The ivy dripped. Outside the window, Reno continued its normal life, oblivious to the fact that an 89-year-old woman had nearly died because some entitled child thought it was funny. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" The question came out rougher than he intended. Evie's eyes filled with tears. "Because I drove you away." Her voice broke completely. "Because the last time we spoke, I told you to leave. Because I've spent 15 years wondering if you'd ever forgive me for making you go when you needed to stay." Garrett felt something crack in his chest, a fissure in the armor he had been wearing for 15 years. "Evie, no, you didn't drive me away. I left because I couldn't face you. Because every time I looked at you, I saw Thomas. I saw what I'd done. You didn't do anything. Thomas made his own. I got him killed." Garrett's voice was raw. "I was his big brother. I was supposed to protect him. And I failed." The tears spilled down Evie's face, cutting tracks through the pallor. "You didn't fail anybody, baby. Thomas loved you. He chose to follow you. And what happened to him was not your fault." She reached out and took his hand with her good arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "I should have told you that 15 years ago instead of telling you to leave. I should have held you and cried with you and helped you carry that grief instead of sending you away to carry it alone. That's my sin, Garrett, not yours." They sat together in the hospital room, holding hands across 15 years of silence and regret, and Garrett felt something he had not felt since the night Thomas died. Hope. Not the bright, shining kind, the small, fragile kind, the kind that whispered maybe it was not too late to come back from the dead. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Not this time. Evie squeezed his hand. Good. Because I need you. I'm here. Tell me what you need. She told him about the deadline. The diner's corporate office had sent a letter. Due to recent incidents and customer complaints, her employment would be terminated in 72 hours unless she could provide written proof from a doctor that she was fit to return to full duties. Customer complaints, Garrett said flatly. Braden's father called corporate, said I'd been rude to his son, that I'd created a hostile environment, that I'd spilled food and then fallen to create a scene. All lies. All lies. But Marcus Caldwell sits on the board, and Linda's just a manager. She can't fight him. And if you lose the job, I lose my health insurance. Evie's voice was steady now, factual. My heart medication costs $800 a month. Social Security doesn't cover it. I've tried to get assistance, but I make $40 too much to qualify. Without the insurance, I can't afford the pills. And without the pills, she did not finish. She did not need to. Garrett stood. His mind was already working, sorting through options, discarding the ones that would not work, focusing on the ones that might. I'll figure something out. Baby, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking that you're not losing your job. You're not losing your insurance. And Braden Caldwell is going to learn what happens when you hurt someone I love. Garrett, I'm not going to do anything stupid. He met her eyes, but I'm not going to do nothing either. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I'll be back tomorrow. You rest. Where are you going to make some phone calls? Evie's house was exactly as Garrett remembered, and that somehow made it worse. Small, clean. The furniture was the same. The photographs on the walls, frozen moments of a family that had been destroyed piece by drowning and war and violence. The throw blanket on the couch that Evie had knitted in 1985. Everything preserved like a museum to a life that had stopped moving forward 15 years ago. Except in one way. Garrett stood in the garage staring. The Harley was perfect. His 1987 Panhead. The bike he had ridden from California to Alaska and back. The bike that had carried him through 20 years of brotherhood and bloodshed. The bike he had left behind when he walked away from everything. Evie had kept it, more than kept it. She had maintained it. The chrome gleamed, the leather seat was oiled and supple. The engine was clean parts, organized, everything in working order. There was a logbook on the workbench nearby, a spiral notebook with a worn cover. Garrett opened it, his grandmother's handwriting. Neat entries every 2 weeks for 15 years. Changed oil, checked battery, ran engine for 30 minutes. Replaced spark plugs, tightened chain, ran engine for 30 minutes. Over and over. For 15 years, keeping his bike alive, keeping it ready, just in case he came home. Garrett's hands shook as he turned the pages. Found entries from last year, last month, last week. Garrett's bike still waiting. I am too. He sat down hard on an old stool and put his head in his hands. Oh, Evie, he whispered to the empty garage. What did I do to deserve you? The bike did not answer. But the logbook did in 15 years of careful maintenance, in the hope of a woman who had never stopped believing her grandson would remember the way home. Garrett stood, walked to the workbench, found the keys hanging on their old hook exactly where he had left them. He straddled the panhead, turned the key, hit the ignition. The engine turned over on the first try, purred like it had been ridden yesterday, because Evie had made sure it would. He sat there in the garage, engine rumbling, and made a decision. 72 hours to fix this. 72 hours to make sure Evie never had to go back to that diner. 72 hours to make sure Braden Caldwell and his father understood that some people could not be bullied without consequences. But he could not do it alone. Not anymore. He had walked away from the Brotherhood, but maybe, just maybe, some bonds did not break just because you stopped wearing the colors. Garrett pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he had not called in 15 years, stared at names that brought back memories, both good and bad. His thumb hovered over one name, Reed McAllister, Wrench, his former vice president, his best friend for 20 years before Garrett had vanished into Montana without explanation. He pressed dial. The phone rang 3 times, then a voice older and rougher but unmistakable. "This is Wrench. Reed, it's me." A long silence. Then, Reaper, the old road name, the name Garrett had not heard spoken aloud in 15 years. It hit different than he expected, like coming home and opening an old wound at the same time. "Yeah, you've got some nerve calling this number, I know. You walked away, brother. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Some of the boys, they're still bitter. They think you're a traitor." Another silence, longer this time. "What do you need?" Reaper straight to it. That was Reed, always had been. No wasted words. "My grandmother's in trouble. Miss Evie." Reed's voice changed immediately, softened. "What kind of trouble?" Garrett told him. "All of it. The harassment, the soup, the heart attack, the 72-hour deadline, Marcus Caldwell's power play." When he finished, Reed was quiet for a long time. Garrett could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost see him sodding in whatever garage or workshop he was calling from, processing the information the way he had always processed everything, methodically and thoroughly. "Where are you?" Reed finally asked. "Reno, at Evie's place." "I'm in Sacramento. 3 hours out. I'll call the others." Reed: "I know I don't have the right to ask. You don't. But Miss Evie does. That woman fed half the angels in Nevada back in the day. Never asked questions. Never judged. Just made sure we knew someone gave a damn." Reed's voice was hard, cold. The voice of a man who had made a decision and would not be moved. "Someone hurts her, they answer to the Brotherhood. Colors or no colors. You're still one of us, Reaper. And that means Evie is too. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Like I said, some of the boys are still bitter. This reunion might not be pretty, but we'll come for her." The line went dead. Garrett sat on the panhead in Evie's garage engine rumbling beneath him and felt something he had not felt in 15 years. Not just hope, something darker and colder. Purpose. Braden Caldwell had made a mistake. He had hurt someone Garrett loved, someone under his protection, whether Braden knew it or not. And Garrett Reaper Stone, former national president of the Hells Angels, the man they used to call Reaper, because he always collected what was owed, was about to teach this spoiled child a lesson about consequences. The old way, the only way that mattered when law and justice had been bought and paid for. The Reaper way. He revved the engine once. The sound echoed off the garage walls like thunder promising rain. 72 hours. The count had begun. The roadhouse sat 15 miles outside Reno, where the desert started to remember it was wild. It was not the kind of place that advertised. You either knew it was there or you had no business finding it. Garrett pulled the panhead into the gravel lot just after sunset, the bike's engine announcing his arrival like a war drum. 4 motorcycles were already parked in a line. He recognized them all. Machines older than most marriages, maintained with the kind of devotion that came from understanding that some things were built to last if you treated them right. He killed the engine. sat for a moment in the settling dust and fading light. 15 years since he had faced these men. 15 years since he had walked away from the only family he had chosen for himself. The door opened. A figure stepped out, backlit by the bar's neon. Big, barrel-chested. Moving like violence was always an option, but rarely necessary. Reed McAllister, wrench, 64 years old and still built like a man who could tear an engine apart with his bare hands, because he had done it more times than he could count. They looked at each other across 20 feet of gravel and 15 years of silence. "You gonna sit on that bike all night?" Reed called out. "Or you going to come inside and face the music?" Garrett dismounted. Cross the lot. Each step felt like walking toward a firing squad and a family reunion at the same time. When he got close enough, Reed's face was visible in the bar light. Older, more gray in the beard, lines carved deeper, but the eyes were the same. Sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "You look like Hell Reaper. You look like you ate hell and ass for seconds." Reed's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Fair enough. They stood there. Two old men who had bled together and built something together and watched it fall apart when one of them disappeared. Then Reed extended his hand. Garrett took it. The handshake lasted longer than necessary, said more than words could. Reed's grip was still strong enough to bend steel. Garrett's was strong enough to meet it. "Come on," Reed said finally. "Let's get this over with." Inside the roadhouse was exactly as Garrett remembered. Dark wood, darker memories. The smell of spilled beer and old smoke that had soaked into the walls back when smoking indoors was still legal. A jukebox in the corner playing Willie Nelson because Willie understood outlaws better than the law ever would. Three men sat at a table in the back. Knox O'Brien, Saint, 68, built like a fence post. Eyes that had seen combat in two different wars and learned that killing was easy, but living with it was the hard part. Milo Kovac, nomad, 62, lean and dangerous. The kind of man who could disappear into any crowd and emerge exactly where you did not want him to be. Preston Hargrove, Doc, 70 years old. Hands that had patched up more bullet wounds and knife cuts than most emergency rooms. Face that looked like old leather left in the sun. They all looked up when Garrett walked in. Nobody smiled. Garrett stopped in front of the table, waited. This was their territory now, their call to make. Knox spoke first. His voice was gravel wrapped in barbed wire. 15 years, yeah. No word, no explanation, just gone, yeah. You know what that did to the club? Knox's jaw was tight. His hands were flat on the table, fingers spread. The hands of a man keeping himself under control. Federal heat was all over us. You were supposed to be our leader, our president, and you vanished like smoke. Left us to deal with the aftermath, I know. Do you? Knox stood. He was not a tall man, but he had the kind of presence that made height irrelevant. We lost chapters, lost brothers, had to rebuild from scratch while RICO charges hung over our heads like a guillotine. And where were you, Montana? Hiding. I wasn't hiding. No, what do you call it? Running. Garrett met Knox's eyes. I was running from the consequences, from the responsibility, from the fact that my decisions had put brothers in danger and I did not know how to fix it. So I ran, and I left you holding the bag, and that was wrong, and I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air like gun smoke. Milo leaned back in his chair. Sorry doesn't bring back the time, Reaper. No, it doesn't. So why are we here? That was Preston. Quiet voice, but when Doc spoke, people listened. You called wrench. He called us. We came, but not for you. We came for Miss Evie. Woman sat with me when my daughter died. Didn't say anything. Just sat. That kind of kindness you don't forget. The others nodded. Evie had touched all of them over the years, fed them, sheltered them, never judged, just loved them the way mothers were supposed to and sometimes did not. She's in trouble, Garrett said, and I can't fix it alone. Then tell us, Reed gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, talk. We'll decide if we're in. Garrett sat, told them everything, the harassment, Braden Caldwell, the soup, the heart attack, the 72-hour deadline, Marcus Caldwell's power and connections. When he finished, Knox was the first to speak. You know we can't just ride over there and tune these boys up, right? That's not how things work anymore. We do that. We're the ones in prison. I know. This Senator Caldwell, Milo said, he's connected, federal level. You go after his son, you're starting a war. We can't win the old way. I know that too. So what's your play? Reed asked. Garrett looked around the table. These men, his brothers, older now, gray and scarred and carrying decades of hard living in their bones, but still here, still loyal to something bigger than themselves. I need information first, he said. I need to know exactly who we're dealing with, Braden's patterns, Marcus's vulnerabilities, how deep this goes. Preston pulled a notebook from his jacket, flipped it open, already started. Made some calls on the drive over. He read from his notes. Braden Caldwell, 26, trust fund baby, father's money, mother's connections. 2DU. I arrest both expunged. One assault charge from college settled out of court. Pattern of entitled behavior with no consequences. The assault charge, Garrett said. Details. Beat up his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend. Put him in the hospital. Broken jaw. Cracked ribs. Family wanted to press charges. Marcus Caldwell made it disappear. Paid them off. Got the record sealed. So he's got history of violence against people he thinks can't fight back. Preston's face was grim. Classic bully profile. Big and strong and used to winning because daddy makes problems disappear. Milo leaned forward. I can tail him. See where he goes, who he meets. If there's a pattern, I'll find it. I'll check the diner, Reed said. Talk to the manager. See if there's security footage. Might need evidence down the line. I'll reach out to some old contacts, Knox said slowly. Still got friends in law enforcement. See what they know about Marcus Caldwell. Man's running for re-election. Politicians always have skeletons. Garrett felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but the weight of carrying this alone was lifting. What about you? Preston asked. What are you doing while we dig? Garrett paused, remembered Knox's earlier warning. I stay visible, he said. Make sure Evie knows she's not alone. Let Braden and his crew know I'm watching. Knox nodded approval. Smart. Sometimes the best weapon is making your enemy nervous. But we need leverage, Reed added. Real leverage. Something that makes Marcus Caldwell back off without us having to throw a single punch. We follow the money, Knox said. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. I know a guy. Used to be a forensic accountant before he decided government work didn't pay enough. If Marcus has got financial skeletons, this guy can find them. That takes time. Everything worth doing takes time, Reaper. You taught us that. Knox's expression softened slightly. Look, I know you want to protect Miss Evie. We all do. But you called us because you can't do this alone. So let us help, the right way, the smart way. Garrett looked around the table, saw the wisdom of age on every face. These men had survived decades of dangerous living by learning when to fight and when to think. Okay, he said, we do it smart, but we've got 72 hours. Then we better get started. Reed stood. The meeting broke up. Brothers moving with purpose. Milo headed out to start surveillance. Knox made calls. Preston started digging into medical records looking for other victims. As they headed for the door, Preston caught Garrett's arm. You know this might not work right. His voice was quiet. We might dig and find nothing. Marcus Caldwell might be clean. And then what? Then we find another way. And if there is no other way, if the only option is to do nothing and let Miss Evie lose her job and her insurance, and maybe her life, Garrett met Preston's eyes. That's not an option. Reaper. She survived the depression. She survived losing her husband to war. She raised 3 sons and a grandson who turned out to be a disappointment. She's worked her whole life, played by the rules, did everything right, and now some entitled punk thinks he can hurt her for fun because his daddy has money. Garrett's voice was quiet but carried weight like a hammer falling. No, that doesn't happen. Not while I'm breathing. Preston studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Just remember, being willing to die for something is easy. Being willing to live with the consequences, that's harder. Outside, the desert night was cold and clear. Stars overhead like scattered diamonds. The kind of sky that made you remember how small you were and how big the world was and how none of it mattered when someone you loved was hurting. Garrett straddled the panhead. The engine started with a roar that felt like coming home. Reed walked over, put a hand on the handlebars. It's good to see you, brother. Even under these circumstances, you too wrench. One more thing. Reed's face was serious. You need to know. When word gets out that you're back, not everyone's going to be happy. There are brothers who felt betrayed, who think you should have stood with us instead of running. They might show up, might want words. I can handle it. I know you can. But it's going to happen. Be ready. Garrett nodded, kicked the bike into gear. Reaper Reed called as he started to pull away. Garrett looked back. We're with you on this, all the way, for Miss Evie. But after we need to talk, really talk, about what happened, about why you left, about whether you're back for good or just passing through. I know, do you? Garrett looked at his old friend, his brother. I ran once, Reed. I'm not running again. Whatever comes after this, I'll face it. I promise. The ride back to Reno gave him time to think. Time to feel the panhead beneath him, the machine Evie had kept alive for 15 years because she had known. Known he would come home eventually. Known he would need it. His phone buzzed. Text from Knox. Got a name. Investigator. Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Address attached. Then another text from Milo. Found Braden. Country club. Drinking with friends. Will follow when he leaves. The pieces were moving. The Brotherhood was working. For the first time in 15 years, Garrett was not alone. The hospital was quiet when he arrived. Visiting hours were technically over, but the night nurse recognized him from earlier and waved him through with a sympathetic smile. Evie was awake, sitting up in bed, reading a paperback Western with large print. She looked up when he entered and smiled. You came back. Told you I would. How was the ride? She knew. Of course she knew. You did not maintain a motorcycle for 15 years without understanding what it meant. Good. The panhead runs perfect. You've been taking care of her. Someone had to. Evie set down her book. She was waiting for you. We both were. Garrett pulled up the chair, sat, took her hand. I saw some old friends tonight. Evie's eyes brightened. Reed, yeah, and Knox. Milo, Preston, they all asked about you, those boys. Her smile was warm. How are they? Older, grayer, meaner looking. Garrett smiled. Same as ever, basically. And they're helping? They are. We've got a plan. Gathering information, finding leverage. We're going to make sure Braden and his father understand there are consequences for what they did. Evie's smile faded slightly. Garrett, I don't want you doing anything that'll get you in trouble. We're doing this the smart way, the legal way. But we're doing it, and if the legal way doesn't work, the question sat between them like a third person in the room. Then we'll figure something else out, Garrett said carefully. Evie squeezed his hand. Baby, I've lived a good life, a full life. If this is how it ends, it's not. But if it is, I don't want you sacrificing your freedom or your future for me. Promise me. Promise me you won't do something stupid because you're trying to protect me. Garrett looked at his grandmother, the woman who had raised him, who had given him every good thing he had ever known about love and loyalty and what it meant to be a man worth being. I can't promise that, Evie. Garrett, you raised me to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, to use whatever strength I have to protect the ones who need protecting. You taught me that a man is measured by how he treats people who can't do anything for him in return. His voice was steady. You can't ask me to ignore everything you taught me just because you're the one who needs protecting now. Evie's eyes filled with tears. You stubborn boy. Wonder where I got that from. She laughed through the tears, reached up and touched his face. You really aren't going anywhere, are you? No, ma'am, not this time. Good. She settled back against the pillows. Because I missed you every single day. I'd see something or hear something and think I should tell Garrett about that. And then remember you were gone. It hurt like a tooth that never stopped aching. I'm sorry, I know. And I forgive you. I forgave you the day you left, if I'm being honest. I was just too proud to say it. She smiled sadly. Pride runs in this family, doesn't it? Like a genetic disease. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The monitor beeped steadily. Evie's heart still beating, still fighting. Tell me about Montana, she said eventually. What did you do up there all alone? So he told her about the workshop, the solitude, the work he did on engines and motorcycles for locals who needed cheap repairs, the quiet days and quieter nights, the way he had convinced himself he was better off alone. Were you, Evie asked? Better off. No, I was just alone. There's a difference, yes, there is. A nurse came in to check vitals. While she worked, Evie asked, have you eaten today? I'll grab something. Garrett Stone, you eat properly. Don't make me get out of this bed and feed you myself. The nurse laughed. She's serious. She tried to get up earlier to help another patient. We had to convince her that's what we're here for. That sounds like her. After the nurse left, Garrett stood. I should let you rest. Will you come back tomorrow? First thing. And you'll be careful, whatever you and the boys are planning, as careful as I can be. That's not very reassuring. It's the best I can do. Evie looked at him for a long moment. Then your grandfather, the one who died at Normandy, he was a lot like you. Strong, stubborn, protective. He wrote me letters from the war. In one of them, he said something I've never forgotten. She paused. He said I'd rather die standing for something than live kneeling for nothing. Garrett felt his throat tighten. I was so angry when they told me he was dead, Evie continued. Angry that he'd left me, that he'd chosen duty over coming home to me. But as I got older, I understood. Some men are built to stand, and if you try to make them kneel, You break something essential in them. She reached out and took his hand again. You're like him. You always have been. And I was wrong to ever ask you to be anything else. So whatever you need to do to make this right, you do it. Just promise me one thing. What? Come back. However this ends, you come back to me. We've lost enough time already. Garrett leaned down and kissed her forehead. I promise. When he walked out of the hospital into the cold Nevada night, Garrett felt the weight of that promise settle into his bones. He would come back. But first he had work to do. 72 hours had become 60, and the clock was still counting down. The coffee shop downtown opened at 6. Garrett was there at 5:45, watching through the window as the barista flipped the sign and unlocked the door. Knox arrived at 8:50, moving with the deliberate economy of a man who had learned long ago that wasted motion could get you killed. They sat in the back corner. Knox ordered black coffee. Garrett ordered the same. Neither of them touched the drinks. At 9 sharp, a man walked through the door, carrying a laptop bag and wearing wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like a high school chemistry teacher. Maxwell Reeves, the forensic accountant Knox had called. He looked nothing like the kind of person who could take down a United States senator, which was probably why he was so good at it. Gentlemen. Maxwell sat down without asking permission, pulled out his laptop, opened it with the practiced efficiency of someone who lived inside spreadsheets and financial documents. So he said, sipping the coffee he had brought with him, "You want to know about Marcus Caldwell?" Everything Knox said, that's a lot. The man's been in politics for 20 years, senator for 12. Before that, state legislature. Before that, corporate lawyer. He's very well connected. We know all that, Garrett said. We need to know what's not in the public record. Maxwell smiled. It was not a nice smile. Well, that's where things get interesting. He turned the laptop so they could see. Spreadsheets, bank statements, corporate filings, the kind of financial architecture that looked legitimate until you knew what you were looking for. Marcus Caldwell is rich, Maxwell said, but not as rich as he wants people to think. His Senate salary is public record, $174,000 a year. Not much for a man who maintains a lifestyle that costs about 3 times that. Big house, he continued ticking items off on his fingers. Country club membership, private schools for the grandkids, expensive cars, high-end vacation properties. Where's the money coming from? Where Knox asked. Officially investment income, he's got holdings in several companies. All legitimate on paper. But when you dig deeper, Maxwell's fingers flew across the keyboard. These companies, they're shells. Holding companies that own other holding companies. Classic money laundering structure. Garrett leaned forward. Laundering what? That's what I'm still trying to figure out. But I did find something interesting. Maxwell pulled up another document, a wire transfer receipt. 3 months ago, Caldwell received a payment of $500,000 from a consulting firm in Delaware. The firm doesn't appear to have any actual business. No employees, no office, just a registered agent and a bank account. Who owns the firm? Garrett asked. Can't tell yet, buried under layers of corporate paperwork. But I'll find it. Maxwell looked up. Whatever Caldwell is into, it's dirty, and he's working very hard to hide it. How long until you can prove it? Depends on how deep it goes. Could be days, could be weeks. We don't have weeks, Garrett said. We have 48 hours. Maxwell closed his laptop. Then I better work fast, but I need something in return. What? When this breaks, and it will break. I get the story. Exclusive. I used to be a journalist before I went into forensic accounting. This kind of corruption story, it's career making. Knox looked at Garrett. Garrett nodded. You got it, Knox said. Just find us something we can use. After Maxwell left, Garrett and Knox sat in the coffee shop nursing drinks that had gone cold. What do you think, Knox asked. I think Marcus Caldwell is dirty, but I also think he's smart. He wouldn't have survived this long if he wasn't careful. So we might not find anything in time. Yeah, Knox was quiet for a moment. Then there's another angle we haven't considered. What? The other victims. Preston's been making calls. There are at least 6 elderly people who've had run-ins with Braden and his crew in the last 3 months. What if we could get them to come forward, make a public case that there's a pattern? You think they'll talk. I think they're scared. But I also think there's strength in numbers. One person speaking up is a target. 6 people, that's a movement. Garrett's phone buzzed. Text from Milo. Braden at gym. Same one every morning, 7 to 9. Regular as clockwork. Then another from Reed. Got the diner footage. Clear as day. Braden tripped her on purpose. Linda willing to testify if we need her. Pieces coming together, not fast enough, but moving, okay, Garrett said. Let's talk to the other victims. See if we can build something. They spent the rest of the morning tracking down names. Preston had done good work. 6 people, all elderly, all working class, all scared. The first one they visited was Lorraine Fitzgerald, 84, Irish immigrant living in a nursing home on the east side of Reno. She was in a wheelchair when they met her in the common room. Small woman, gray hair, bright blue eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. You're here about the Caldwell boys, she said when Knox introduced them. Yes, ma'am. He did this, she gestured to her leg. 3 months ago, parking lot outside the grocery store. He was walking out, not looking, talking on his phone. I asked him politely to watch where he was going. He called me an old hag and pushed me. I fell, broke my hip. Did you report it? Garrett asked. To who the police they came, took a statement, said it was my word against his. When I insisted, a lawyer showed up. Marcus Caldwell's lawyer told me if I pursued charges, they'd countersue for defamation. Said I'd lose my home. Her voice shook slightly. I got scared. I dropped it. We're gathering evidence, Knox said. We want to show there's a pattern, if you'd be willing to give a statement. No, Lorraine's voice was firm. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm too old to fight a senator. It would kill me. The stress alone. They thanked her and left. Got the same answer from the next 2 victims. Fear, deep and justified. By the time they reached the 4th victim, Garrett was ready to give up. But Knox insisted they try. Margaret Walsh, 76, former school teacher, living alone in a small apartment near downtown. She invited them in, made tea, listened to their story. When they finished, she said, I'll do it. Ma'am, Garrett started, I'll give a statement. I'll testify if needed. That boy needs to learn he can't treat people like garbage just because his father has power. You understand the risks, Knox asked. I'm 76 years old. I taught high school English for 40 years. You think I'm afraid of some entitled brat and his corrupt father? Margaret's smile was steel. My husband died fighting in Korea so people like me could stand up to people like them. I'm not going to dishonor his memory by staying quiet. They got her statement. Detailed, clear, damning, 1 down. Not enough, but a start. Garrett's phone rang as they were leaving Margaret's apartment. Unknown number. Yeah. Mr. Stone. This is Linda from the diner. I need to talk to you. In person. It's about Evie. His stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing. I mean, she's fine. But something happened. Can you come to the diner on my way? The diner was closed when Garrett arrived. Linda let him in through the back door. She looked scared. Pale. Her hands were shaking. What happened? Braden came back. About an hour ago, with his father. Garrett's hands clenched, and Marcus Caldwell offered me money. A lot of money, $20,000. He said it was a generous settlement for any distress his son may have caused. In exchange, I had to fire Evie immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement saying there was never any incident. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. Linda's chin was up. Her hands had stopped shaking. He said I was making a mistake, that he'd ruin my business, that I'd lose everything. I told him some things are more important than money. He didn't like that. But here's the thing. She pulled out her phone, showed him a recording app, a file that was 43 minutes long. I recorded the whole conversation, him offering the bribe, him threatening me, all of it. Garrett stared at the phone. You recorded him trying to bribe you? Yes, and I already sent a copy to my lawyer and to my email. Cloud backup, the works. Linda's smile was fierce. You're not the only one who can fight dirty Mr. Stone. I've been running this diner for 20 years. You don't last that long without learning how to protect yourself. For the first time since this started, Garrett laughed. Really laughed. You're amazing. You know that I'm a survivor. And Evie is my friend. You don't mess with my friends. Garrett's phone buzzed. Text from Maxwell. Found it. Call me. He called. Maxwell answered on the first ring. The Delaware Shell Company. It's owned by a lobbying firm in D.C. The lobbying firm represents mining interests. 3 months ago, Marcus Caldwell voted against environmental regulations that would have restricted mining in Nevada. 2 weeks later, the $500,000 payment showed up. That's a bribe, yes, clear as day, and I've got the paper trail to prove it. Garrett's mind was racing. Can you have a full report ready by tomorrow morning? Already working on it. Send copies to Knox when you're done, and to a journalist, someone who can't be bought. I know just the person. After the call ended, Garrett stood in the empty diner, pieces falling into place. Linda's recording, Maxwell's financial evidence, Margaret Walsh's testimony, Reed's security footage, Preston's medical records from the other victims. It was not everything, but it was enough. Enough to build a case. Enough to show that Braden Caldwell was a pattern abuser and Marcus Caldwell was a corrupt politician who would do anything to protect his son. Enough to fight back. His phone rang again. Milo this time. Reaper, you need to see this. What I followed Braden to a bar. He's here with his crew, and they're talking. Loud, drunk, stupid. What are they saying? Planning something, talking about teaching that old bitch a lesson, making sure she never works again. They mentioned your name too, said if you keep poking around, they'll make you regret it. Ice ran down Garrett's spine. Where are you? Milo gave him the address, a dive bar on the north side of town. Stay on him, Garrett said. Don't engage, just watch. Reaper, I'm on my way. He was out the door and on the panhead in seconds. The ride across town was fast and angry. The old rage building, the Reaper waking up. He forced himself to breathe, to think, to remember what Knox had said. Smart, not violent. Smart. But if Braden was planning to hurt Evie again, the dive bar was exactly what it sounded like. Neon signs, sticky floors, the smell of desperation and bad decisions. Milo was waiting outside, leaning against his bike. They're still in there, he said. Corner booth, getting drunker and stupider by the minute. How many? Braden and 3 friends, including the 2 from the diner. Garrett looked through the window, saw them, young, arrogant, laughing about something, planning to hurt an 89-year-old woman because she dared to talk back. Every instinct screamed at him to walk in there and make them understand pain, to teach them what happened when you mess with the wrong family. But that was the old way, the way that had led to federal charges and broken brotherhood and 15 years of running. We wait, Garrett said. For what? For them to leave. Then we follow. See where they go, what they do. We document everything. And if they go after Miss Evie, then we stop them. But we do it smart. We call the cops, get it on record, make it official. Milo studied him. You've changed. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just old enough to know the difference between strength and stupidity. They waited. 2 hours. Finally, Braden and his crew stumbled out, got into an expensive SUV. Braden was driving, which was itself a crime given how drunk he was. Call it in, Garrett said. Anonymous tip. Drunk driver. Milo made the call. Within 10 minutes, red and blue lights appeared. The SUV got pulled over 3 blocks away. Garrett and Milo watched from a distance as Braden failed a field sobriety test, watched as he got arrested, watched as his friends called someone, probably Marcus, to come bail him out. That's going to cost him, Milo said. 3rd DUI. Even with his father's connections, that's serious. Good. Let him sweat. But as they rode away, Garrett could not shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that Braden getting arrested would make him angrier, more dangerous. And there were still 24 hours until Evie's deadline. 24 hours for everything to go right, or everything to go wrong. The call came at 3 in the morning. Garrett jerked awake in Evie's guest room, hand reaching for his phone before his eyes were fully open. 15 years of sleeping light never went away. Once you learned to wake up ready for trouble, your body never forgot. Yeah. Reaper. Milo's voice, tight, controlled. The tone that meant something had gone very wrong. Evie's gone. The words hit like a fist to the chest. Garrett was on his feet, pulling on jeans, phone wedged between shoulder and ear. What do you mean gone? I was watching the hospital. Standard rotation, 2 a.m. 3 guys came out of the east entrance with someone in a wheelchair. Moved fast, wrong body language for orderlies. I got close enough to see. Milo paused. It's her Reaper. They took her. Garrett's vision went red at the edges. The old rage, the Reaper rage, the kind that had made men cross the street when they saw him coming. Where are they now? Lost them on Interstate 80 heading east. I tried to follow, but they made me. Split up, used multiple vehicles. Professional job. Braden's not professional. No, but Daddy's money can buy professional. Garrett was already moving. Boots, jacket, keys. The panhead was in the driveway. Cold engine waiting. I'm calling the others, he said. Where are you, Reno? Warehouse district. Rail yard. He pulled over to call you. Stay there, I'm coming. He hung up, dialed Reed. The phone rang 4 times before a sleep-rough voice answered. This better be important. They took her. Silence, then. I'm up. Where? Don't know yet. Milo lost them on 80 eastbound. I'm heading to meet him now. I'll call Knox and Preston. We'll rendezvous at your location. Reed, if they hurt her, they won't. Not yet. She's leverage. They want something. What you? They want you to back off. Stop digging. This is Marcus Caldwell showing his teeth. Garrett knew Reed was right, knew it tactically, strategically, but knowing did not cool the rage burning in his chest. I'm going to kill him. No, you're not. You're going to get Miss Evie back safe. Then we're going to destroy him the right way. The way that sticks. The panhead roared to life. Garrett tore out of the driveway, engine screaming into the Nevada night. The warehouse district was abandoned this time of night. Skeletal buildings and empty lots. Milo's bike was parked under a broken streetlight, the rider standing next to it like a statue carved from leather and bad intentions. Garrett pulled up, killed the engine. Tell me everything. Three guys, two big, one normal-sized, all dressed like hospital workers but moving wrong. Too alert, too coordinated. They had a van waiting. White panel van, no plates visible. Driver stayed in the vehicle. They loaded her in, drove off. Milo's voice was flat, factual, the way you reported mission failures. I followed for 15 minutes before they split up. Van went east. Black sedan went south. SUV went north. Classic evasion. You get anything? Partial plate. Van had a rental company sticker. Enterprise. Reno location. That's it. Garrett's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Just you and me. Come alone or grandma pays. Address attached. Abandoned railroad depot. 15 miles outside Reno. Let me guess, Milo said, reading Garrett's face. You got a message. Yeah. And you're thinking about going alone. Like they asked. Yeah. That's the stupidest thing you could possibly do. I know. Milo pulled out his own phone. I'm calling the others. No, not yet. Garrett looked at the text again. They're watching. They know we've been working together. If I show up with the whole crew, they'll know I didn't follow instructions. So what's your play? I go in alone. You and the others position around the perimeter. Close enough to move if things go bad. Far enough to stay invisible. Reaper, her heart's weak. If she goes into cardiac arrest out there. He did not finish. Did not need to. Milo studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but we go in armed, and if I hear gunfire, I don't care what the plan was. We're coming in hot. Agreed. By the time they reached the depot, the others were already in position. Reed had parked his truck a quarter-mile away. Watching the approach through binoculars, Knox was somewhere in the scrub brush with a hunting rifle he claimed was for varmints, but everyone knew had seen action in two different wars. Preston had the medical bag in his van, ready to move if needed. The depot itself was a relic from when trains still mattered in this part of Nevada. Rusted tracks, collapsed loading platforms, a main building with most of its windows broken and weather-worn walls covered in graffiti. One light was on inside, flickering, probably a lantern. Garrett parked the panhead 50 yards out, killed the engine. The silence that followed was total except for the wind moving through dead grass. He dismounted, checked the knife in his boot, the small pistol at the small of his back. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive when negotiations went south. Then he walked toward the light. The depot's main floor was vast and empty. His footsteps echoed off concrete and steel. The lantern sat in the center of the space, casting long shadows, and next to it, in a chair, was Evie. She was tied, hands behind her back, feet bound to the chair legs, duct tape across her mouth, but her eyes were open, alert, angry, alive. Relief flooded through Garrett so powerfully his knees almost buckled. That's far enough. The voice came from the shadows. Male, young, familiar. Braden Caldwell stepped into the light. He looked different than he had at the diner. Harder, meaner. The smirk was gone, replaced by something that might have been fear wearing a mask of bravado. Behind him, two men emerged. Big, professional, not thugs, contractors. The kind of muscle money could rent by the hour. You came, Braden said. Good. Let her go, just like that, Braden laughed. The sound was wrong. Too high, too tight. You've been causing problems, old man. You and your biker friends. following me, digging into my father's business, getting me arrested. You got yourself arrested, driving drunk. Third offense. My father fixed it, charges dropped, made some calls. Braden moved closer, but he's tired of dealing with you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Nevada. Tonight, you and your crew, you're going to stop investigating, stop asking questions, stop existing in our world. And if I don't, Braden gestured to Evie, then Grandma here has an accident, falls down some stairs, has another heart attack. Whatever. Point is, she's fragile. Accidents happen to fragile old ladies. Garrett looked past Braden to the two contractors, read their body language. They were professionals, but they were not comfortable. This was not their kind of job. Kidnapping an elderly woman crossed lines even hired muscle had. Your father sent you to do this? Garrett asked. Or was this your idea? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because if this was your idea, you're stupider than I thought. And if it was his, he's more desperate than I realized. Braden's face flushed. You don't talk about my father. Your father's a corrupt politician who takes bribes from mining companies and uses his power to make problems disappear. We've got the evidence, financial records, witness testimony, recording of him trying to bribe the diner manager. Garrett's voice was calm, conversational. It's over, Braden. You just don't know it yet. You're lying, am I? Ask yourself, why would I come here alone if I was bluffing? Why would I risk it? Garrett took a step forward. The contractors tensed but did not move. I came because you took something that belongs to me, and because I wanted to give you one chance to make this right. Make it right, Braden pulled a gun from his waistband. Small caliber, shaky grip, definitely not a professional. I'm the one with the gun, old man. I'm the one in control here. No, you're the one who's scared. I can see it. You're in over your head, and you know it. Another step forward. Your father sent you to clean up his mess, and you're here waving a gun around because you don't know what else to do. Shut up. Put the gun down, son. Untie my grandmother. Walk away. This doesn't have to end with you in prison. I said, shut up. Braden's hand was shaking now. The gun wavered. You think you're tough? You think because you used to run with the angels that makes you dangerous? You're just an old man. You're nothing. Garrett stopped walking, stood perfectly still. You're right, he said quietly. I am old, 67 years, body full of scars and mistakes. But you know what all those years taught me, Braden? He paused. They taught me the difference between violence and strength. Violence is easy. Any fool can pull a trigger. But strength is standing here unarmed, knowing that gun could end me and still choosing to give you a way out. There is no way out. There's always a way out, always a choice. You chose to hurt my grandmother because you thought you could, because no one ever taught you that actions have consequences, because your father always made your problems disappear. Garrett's eyes held Braden's. But I'm not going to disappear, and neither is the evidence, and neither are the witnesses. You pull that trigger, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Is that what you want? Braden's face twisted. Rage and fear and confusion all fighting for control. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Your father's going down. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you make a different choice. Right here, right now. The gun shook harder. Braden's breathing was ragged. Then a new voice cut through the tension. Braden, put the gun down. Everyone turned. Marcus Caldwell stood in the depot entrance. Expensive suit, silver hair, the face of a man used to boardrooms and backroom deals. But the eyes were cold. calculating. Dad, I said, put it down, now. Braden lowered the gun. The relief on his face was obvious. Daddy was here. Daddy would fix it. Marcus walked into the light, looked at Garrett, then at Evie, then back at Garrett. Mr. Stone, this has gotten out of hand. You kidnapped my grandmother. I did no such thing. My son made an error in judgment. I'm here to correct it. By what? Making her disappear. Making me disappear by offering you a deal. Marcus's voice was smooth, practiced. $500,000. Wired to any account you specify. In exchange, you leave Nevada. You drop your investigation. You forget this ever happened. You think you can buy me. I think everyone has a price, Mr. Stone. And I think you're smart enough to know when you're outmatched. I have resources, connections. I can make your life very difficult, or I can make you rich. Your choice. Garrett looked at Marcus Caldwell, saw a man who had spent his entire life believing that money and power could solve any problem. A man who had never met a consequence he could not buy his way out of. I have a counteroffer, Garrett said. I'm listening. You let Evie go right now. You turn yourself in to the FBI. You confess to accepting bribes, to obstruction of justice, to kidnapping. And maybe I convince the prosecutor to go easy on your son. Marcus laughed, actually laughed. You can't be serious, dead serious. You have no evidence. I have financial records showing $500,000 in suspicious payments. I have a recording of you trying to bribe a witness. I have testimony from multiple victims of your son's abuse. I have security footage of assault. Garrett's voice was steady. I have enough to bury you, Senator. For the first time, Marcus's confidence flickered. You're bluffing. Am I? Your investigator. Maxwell Reeves, he's very good. Found things you thought were buried deep. And he's not the only one digging. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Nevada will have the full story. Senator Marcus Caldwell, corrupt politician, has a nice ring to it. Marcus's face went red. You son of a dad. Braden's voice was small, scared. Is it true the bribes the mining companies? Shut up, Braden. Dad, he said there's evidence. I said shut up. Marcus rounded on his son. This is your fault. If you just left that old woman alone, if you hadn't been so goddamn stupid. I was doing what you told me. Braden's voice rose. You said to make sure the old people in that district didn't vote. You said to scare them. You said, the words hung in the air like a confession shouted in an empty church. Marcus realized his mistake immediately, looked around, saw Garrett's expression. You've been targeting elderly voters, Garrett said slowly, systematically, to suppress the vote in districts where you might lose. You can't prove I can now. Your son just confessed, and you just confirmed it. Garrett pulled out his phone, held it up. The recording app was running. Had been since he entered the depot. Got every word. Marcus's face went white, then purple. But there was something else, something darker in his eyes, something that looked like a man with nothing left to lose. You want the truth, Stone? Marcus's voice had changed, lower, more dangerous. Your self-righteous grandmother isn't so innocent either. What are you talking about? That land under her house. You think it's worthless? There's a gold deposit worth $20 million under there. Has been for 50 years, and your grandfather knew it before he shipped out to Normandy. Garrett's blood ran cold, and when I found out Marcus continued, I tried to buy it, offered her a fair price, but she refused. Said it was family land, sacred ground, so I had to get creative. He smiled. A terrible smile. Your parents drowning at Lake Tahoe. That wasn't an accident, Stone. I needed them gone. Needed Evelyn vulnerable. Needed to make sure I could eventually take what should have been mine. Paid some men to make it look like they got caught in a current. Made it clean. No witnesses. Garrett felt the world tilt. His parents. The drowning that had shaped his entire childhood. The accident that had sent him to live with Evie. Not an accident. Murder. And Marcus Caldwell had been behind it all along. You killed them, Garrett said. His voice was barely above a whisper. You killed my parents for land. I did what needed to be done, and I've been watching that property for 40 years, waiting for Evelyn to die, waiting for my chance. Marcus's face was twisted now, all pretense of civility gone. But then you came back, started digging, started making problems, just like your father did when he found out about the gold. He was going to go public, going to ruin everything. Garrett's vision narrowed. The rage was no longer hot. It was cold, Arctic, the kind that made men very, very careful. So I had them both killed. Marcus continued, made it look natural, and I've been patient, so patient. 50 years of waiting. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket. Not the small pistol Braden had been waving around. Something bigger. Professional. But I'm done waiting. I'm done being patient. You've ruined everything, Stone. So here's what's going to happen. You and your grandmother are going to have an accident. A tragic break-in. You came to save her. The kidnappers panicked, shot you both. His finger tightened on the trigger, and then that land will finally be mine. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, but it did not come from Marcus's gun. It came from the shadows. High, precise. Marcus dropped, screaming, clutching his leg. The gun clattered away. Blood spread across the concrete. Knox emerged from a broken window, rifle in hand. Told you I don't miss. Suddenly, the depot was full of motion. Reed burst through the front entrance. Milo and Preston came from the sides. The two contractors put their hands up immediately. Smart enough to know when they were outmatched, Preston went straight to Marcus. Medical bag already open. Through and through, you'll live, unfortunately. Reed cut Evie free. She ripped the tape from her mouth. Those idiots couldn't even tie knots right, she said, checking herself over. I've been working on the ropes for the last 10 minutes. She glared at Braden, who stood frozen in shock. And you should be ashamed. Your mother raised you better than this. Braden looked at his father bleeding on the ground, at the bikers surrounding them, at Garrett holding up the phone with the recording. Then he sat down hard and put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't know about your parents, about any of it, I thought. His voice broke completely. I thought I was just doing what he wanted. I thought I was being a good son. Garrett stood over him. Every muscle in his body wanted to hurt this boy, to make him pay for Evie's pain, for his parents' deaths, for everything. But he looked at Evie, saw her watching him, saw the woman who had taught him that strength was not about violence, that being a man meant choosing the harder path. You were being a good son, Garrett said quietly, just to the wrong father. The FBI arrived 20 minutes later. Turned out Knox's old military buddy was not just a journalist. He was also friends with a federal prosecutor who had been looking for a way to take down Marcus Caldwell for years. They'd been listening to everything through Knox's phone line, had agents staged nearby, had been waiting for Marcus to incriminate himself, which he had, spectacularly. The special agent in charge, a woman named Torres, with steel gray hair and no patience for corruption, read Marcus's rights while medics loaded him into an ambulance under armed guard. Mr. Caldwell, you're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted bribery of a federal witness, conspiracy to commit election fraud, accepting illegal campaign contributions, voter suppression, and 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Daniel and Catherine Stone. Marcus said nothing, just stared at Garrett with eyes full of hate. You have the right to remain silent. Torres continued. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Braden was arrested too, but on lesser charges. The kidnapping was clearly his father's idea. The assault charges from the diner were his, but the prosecutor seemed willing to deal if he testified against Marcus. Before they put him in the patrol car, Braden looked at Garrett. I really am sorry. About your grandmother, about your parents, about everything. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. I know, but I want to try. I want to. I don't want to be him. He gestured toward the ambulance carrying his father. I want to be better. Garrett studied the young man, saw genuine remorse, genuine fear, and maybe buried deep the possibility of change. Then be better, he said. Take responsibility. Do the time. Make amends. And when you get out, be the man your mother hoped you'd be, not the man your father made you. Braden nodded, tears on his face. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank her. Garrett nodded toward Evie. She's the one who taught me about second chances. After the federal vehicles left, the Brotherhood stood in the parking lot. Dawn was breaking over the desert, pink and gold light painting the sky like a promise the world was making to itself. Well, Reed said, that was exciting. Too exciting, Preston muttered. He had checked Evie 3 times already, blood pressure stable, heart rate elevated but not dangerous. No signs of another cardiac event. I'm fine, Evie said, waving him off. Just tired and hungry. Someone take me to breakfast. They went to the diner. Linda opened early just for them, made them the biggest breakfast Garrett had seen in years. Eggs and bacon and hash browns and coffee that could strip paint. The crew gathered around the big corner booth, Evie in the middle, surrounded by bikers who looked like they could tear down buildings but were currently arguing about whether sausage gravy was better than country gravy. This, Evie said, looking around at all of them. This is family. Damn right, Reed said. The news broke that afternoon. Maxwell Reeves's expose ran in 3 major newspapers simultaneously. Senator Marcus Caldwell, corruption, bribery, election fraud, voter suppression, 2 counts of murder, his son's assault pattern, the whole ugly story. By evening, the state had opened an investigation into the 1990 deaths of Daniel and Catherine Stone. Cold case detectives were already interviewing witnesses, following leads. Marcus Caldwell's lawyer had started negotiating a plea deal, but the prosecutor was pushing for the maximum: life in prison without parole. The diner's corporate office called Linda personally to apologize. Evie's job was safe, more than safe. They offered her a promotion to training coordinator, better pay, flexible hours. She accepted on the condition that she could still work the floor when she wanted to. I'm not ready to quit yet, she told Garrett. I'll quit when I'm dead. Don't joke about that. Who's joking? 3 days later, Garrett sat with Evie on her front porch. The same porch where they had said goodbye 15 years ago. The same chairs, the same view of the street, but everything was different. You're staying, Evie said. Not a question, a statement. If you'll have me, on one condition. What's that? You stop running. from your past, from the Brotherhood, from yourself. She took his hand. You made mistakes. We all did. But you can't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for being human. I left you for 15 years, and you came back. That's what matters. She squeezed his hand. Your grandfather used to say that a man's not defined by his mistakes. He's defined by what he does after. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up, kids heading to school, adults heading to work, normal life flowing around them. I found out why my parents died, Garrett said quietly. After all these years, I finally know. Evie's hand tightened on his. Marcus Caldwell told me, before the FBI arrived, said he had them killed because my father found out about the gold under your land, was going to expose him. She was quiet for a long moment. I suspected, she said finally. Not about the gold. I didn't know about that. But I never believed it was an accident. Your father was too good a swimmer, and the current that day wasn't that strong. Why didn't you say anything? Because I had no proof, and because I had you to take care of. A 6-year-old boy who had just lost his parents. What was I supposed to do? Tell you I thought they were murdered but couldn't prove it. Let that poison your childhood. She turned to look at him. I made a choice to let you grow up safe, to let you be a child for as long as you could. Was it the right choice? I don't know. But it's the one I made. You protected me. I tried. Just like you protected me these last few days. We protect each other. That's what family does. Yes, it is. Reed talked to me, Evie said eventually. Said the club wants you back, I know. What did you tell him? That I needed to think about it. And have you? The Brotherhood had been his life for 24 years, leading them, riding with them, building something that mattered. But it had also led to violence, to federal investigations, to choices he regretted. I don't know if I can go back to that life, he said, honestly. The club, the politics, all of it. Then don't. But don't cut yourself off from them either. They're your brothers. They showed up when you needed them. That counts for something. Yeah, it does. So find a middle ground. Be part of their lives without it consuming yours. You can do that, can't you? He smiled. When did you get so wise? I was born wise. You just weren't listening. That evening, Garrett met the Brotherhood at the Roadhouse. All of them. Not just his old core crew, but other angels from rounding chapters. 25 men in leather and denim filling the bar with the sound of engines and Brotherhood. When he walked in, the room went quiet. Then Reed stood, raised his beer. To the Reaper, who taught us that real strength isn't about fighting. It's about standing up when it matters most. To family, the room echoed. They drank, talked, laughed, remembered old rides and old friends. Late in the evening, the current national president, a man named Derek, with more gray than black in his beard, pulled Garrett aside. Heard what you did, how you handled Caldwell. Smart, strategic. That's the kind of leadership we need. I'm not coming back to the club. I know, and I respect that. But I have a proposition. Derek leaned against the bar. We need advisors. Older brothers who have been through the wars and learned from them. Men who can help us navigate the modern world without losing what makes us who we are. You interested? What would that look like? No colors, no obligation. Just when we need wisdom, we call. You answer if you can. If you can't, no hard feelings. Think of it as being an elder statesman. Garrett considered. It was a middle ground, a way to be part of the Brotherhood without being consumed by it. I can do that. Good. Derek extended his hand. They shook. Welcome back, brother. On your terms. 6 months later, Garrett stood in a courtroom watching Braden Caldwell get sentenced. The young man had taken a plea deal, testified against his father, shown genuine remorse. The judge gave him 2 years in minimum security, plus 500 hours of community service at nursing homes after release. It was fair, maybe even generous. Marcus Caldwell had been tried separately, found guilty on all counts. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. The judge gave him 2 consecutive life sentences, one for each murder, no parole, no early release. Democracy depends on every citizen having an equal voice, she had said during sentencing. You tried to silence the elderly, the vulnerable, those you deemed inconvenient. You murdered innocent people for greed. You corrupted the office you held in trust. There is no punishment severe enough for what you've done, but life in prison will have to suffice. After Braden's sentencing, he approached Garrett in the hallway. I start my sentence next week, he said, but I wanted to thank you for what? For giving me a choice that night at the depot. You could have killed me, could have let your friends kill me, but you gave me a chance to be better. You're giving yourself that chance. I just held the door open. Still, Braden hesitated. I enrolled in college, online courses. I'm going to study social work. When I get out, I want to help people, elderly people especially. Maybe I can make up for some of what I did. That's good. That's real good, Braden. Will you? Could you tell Miss Evie that I'm trying? You can tell her yourself. She visits the prison sometimes. Volunteers, reading to inmates. Braden's eyes widened. She does, says everyone deserves someone who believes in them, even people who've made mistakes. Thanksgiving that year was at Evie's house, but the small dining room could not contain everyone. So they set up tables in the backyard. Evie, Garrett, the Brotherhood and their families, Linda from the diner, Margaret Walsh, the school teacher who had been brave enough to testify, other victims who had found their voices, Maxwell Reeves, who had won a journalism award for his expose. Even Agent Torres stopped by with her family. Never thought I'd have Thanksgiving with a bunch of bikers, she said, accepting a plate of turkey from Reed. Never thought I'd have Thanksgiving with a fed Reed shot back. But here we are. Everyone laughed. As the sun set and the desert cooled, Garrett found himself standing apart from the crowd, watching, listening to the sound of family and friendship and second chances. Evie appeared beside him, took his hand. You did good, baby. We did good. All of us. Yes, but you started it. You came home. I should have come home sooner. Maybe. Or maybe you came home exactly when you were supposed to, when you were ready, when we both were. She leaned against him. I'm proud of you. Your grandfather would be too. Garrett felt his throat tighten. I spent so long thinking I'd failed him. Failed you, failed everyone. And now I think maybe failure isn't final. Maybe you can come back from it if you're willing to do the work. That's the wisest thing you've said in 15 years. They stood together, watching their family chosen and blood celebrate around tables full of food and laughter. You know what your grandfather's last letter said? Evie asked. The one he wrote before Normandy Numb. He said, if I don't make it home, tell our boy that love is stronger than death. That family is stronger than distance. That doing the right thing is always worth the key. And that it's never too late to come back to who you're meant to be. He couldn't have known. Maybe not. But he knew you. Knew the blood running in your veins. Knew that someday you'd need to hear those words. She squeezed his hand. You came home, Garrett. You stood up when it mattered. You protected Wiki, your family. You gave a young man a chance at redemption. You found out the truth about your parents. That's the man your grandfather was talking about. That's the man I raised. That's who you've always been under all the mistakes and running. Garrett looked down at his grandmother, 89 years old, still standing, still teaching, still loving with a fierceness that time could not touch. I love you, Evie. I love you too, baby. Always have, always will. Reed called out from the tables. Reaper, get over here. We're about to start the stories. The one about that time you rode from L.A. to Seattle in a thunderstorm wearing nothing but chaps and a smile. That is not what happened, Garrett called back. Prove it, Evie laughed. Go on, be with your brothers. I'll be here when you get back. You always are. As Garrett walked toward the tables, toward the laughter and brotherhood and family, he felt something settle in his chest. Something that had been restless for 15 years. He was home, not the Montana wilderness where he had hidden from himself, not the open road where he had run from consequences. Here, in Reno, in Evie's backyard, surrounded by people who knew his worst and loved him anyway. This was home, and he was finally ready to stay. Later that night, after everyone had left and Evie had gone to bed, Garrett sat in the garage with the panhead. The bike gleamed under the overhead light. 15 years of hope captured in chrome and oil. He opened the maintenance log one more time, flipped to the very last entry, written just 3 days ago, Garrett's bike, still waiting. I am too. His phone buzzed, text from Braden. I start my sentence tomorrow. Scared but ready. Thank you for showing me there's another way. Tell Miss Evie I'll make her proud. Garrett typed back. You already are, son. Keep walking toward the light. He set the phone down. Looked at the photographs on the garage wall. His grandfather in uniform. Young Evie, fierce and beautiful. The Brotherhood in their glory days. And one he had never seen before. New, in a simple frame. It was from the depot, after the arrests. Evie surrounded by the Brotherhood. All of them looking at her like she was the queen and they were her knights. Someone had written on the back. He turned it over. Family isn't blood, it's who shows up. Footsteps behind him. You gonna sleep with that bike or you coming inside? Evie stood in the doorway, wrapped in her robe, but she was holding something. The leather jacket, Garrett's jacket, the one he had given her at the diner, the one she had been wearing when she collapsed. I had it cleaned, she said. Figured you'd want it back. Garrett stood, took the jacket, felt the familiar weight. Keep it, he said. Looks better on you anyway. It's about 6 sizes too big. That's not what I meant. Evie smiled, walked to him, stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Your grandfather's jacket is in the hall closet, she said quietly. The one from Normandy. I've kept it all these years. I was thinking, maybe it's time you had it. Garrett's throat closed. Evie, you're not replacing him. You're honoring him. There's a difference, she squeezed his hand. He'd want you to have it. Want you to remember that stone men don't run forever. Eventually we plant our feet and make our stand. She turned to go, then paused. One more thing. She reached into her robe pocket, pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed. The paper soft with age. Thomas left this, she said. 15 years ago, the night he died. He gave it to me before that last job. Said if anything happened, I should give it to you. But only when you were ready. Her eyes held his. I think you're ready now. She placed the envelope in his hand, then disappeared into the house. Garrett stood alone in the garage, the panhead behind him, his grandfather's jacket waiting in the closet, Thomas's letter in his hand. He sat down on the old stool, turned the envelope over. His name in Thomas's handwriting. Garrett, open when you're ready to stop running. His hands shook as he broke the seal. Inside were two things: a photograph, the two of them, brothers. Garrett maybe 12, Thomas 6, at Lake Tahoe, before the drowning, before everything changed. Both of them grinning at the camera, Thomas's small hand holding tight to Garrett's arm. And a letter. Big brother, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm guessing you're blaming yourself. That's what you do. You take on the weight of the world and carry it like it's your job. But here's what you need to know. I chose this life. I chose to follow you into the angels. Not because you forced me, not because I was too dumb to know better, but because you were my hero. You saved my life when I was 6 years old. You pulled me out of that water when I was drowning. And every day after that, I wanted to be like you. Strong, brave, someone who stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. You think you led me into danger, but you led me into purpose. You gave me a reason to be more than just another trust fund kid coasting on family money. You showed me what it meant to be part of something bigger than myself. And if I die doing this, know that I die proud. Proud to be your brother. Proud to ride with you. Proud to have spent my life trying to be half the man you are. The truth is, I'm writing this because the FBI contacted me. They want me to inform on the club, to betray you, to save myself by destroying everything we built. I told them to go to hell, but they're not going to stop. They're going to keep pushing, keep threatening, and eventually they're going to put you in a position where you have to choose between protecting the Brotherhood and protecting yourself. So I'm making the choice for you. Tonight's job is a setup. I know that. The FBI told me. They think I'll use the information to save myself, but I'm going to use it to save you. I'm going to make sure you get out. Make sure you survive, even if I don't, because that's what little brothers do. We protect our big brothers, even when they don't know they need protecting. Don't blame yourself for my death. Don't carry it like a burden. Carry it like a torch. Let it light your way forward. Live Garrett. Live big. Live well. Live the life I would have wanted if I'd gotten the chance. Go back to Grandma. She needs you more than the club does, and you need her more than you know. Be the man she raised you to be, not the man the world tried to make you, and know that wherever I am, I'm proud of you. Always have been, always will be. Your little brother, Thomas. P.S. I left something for you at the house. In my old room, under the floorboard by the window. Don't open it until you're ready to stop running. Garrett sat in the garage, the letter in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of grief, tears of release. For 15 years he had carried the weight of Thomas's death, the belief that he had failed his brother, that his choices had killed the one person who had looked up to him most. But Thomas had not died because of Garrett. Thomas had died protecting Garrett, had chosen sacrifice over betrayal, had chosen love over survival, and in doing so had given Garrett a gift he had been too broken to accept, the gift of living without guilt, the gift of coming home. Garrett stood, wiped his eyes, folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Then he walked into the house, up the stairs, to the room that had been Thomas's. The room Evie had kept exactly as it was, frozen in time, a museum to a life cut short. Garrett went to the window, found the loose floorboard, pulled it up. Inside was a small box, wooden, hand-carved. He opened it. Inside was a watch, their grandfather's watch, the one he had worn at Normandy, the one that had stopped at 06:45 on June 6, 1944, the exact moment he had died, in a note. This was supposed to go to the eldest grandson. That's you. Grandma was going to give it to you when you turned 30, but I asked her to let me give it to you instead. Whenever you were ready, the watch doesn't work anymore. Hasn't for 80 years. But that's kind of perfect. Because some moments are worth freezing, worth remembering, worth carrying with us forever. The moment Grandpa chose to stand and fight instead of run and hide. The moment he became more than just a man. He became a legacy. You're our legacy now, Garrett. Carry it well. Love. Thomas. Garrett held the watch, felt the weight of 3 generations in his hands. His grandfather, who had died at Normandy standing for something, Thomas, who had died protecting the brother he loved, and Garrett, who had finally stopped running and learned to stand. He put the watch on his wrist, the stopped hands frozen at 06:45, a reminder. Some moments defined you, and you got to choose which ones. The next morning, Garrett found Evie in the kitchen making coffee. She looked up when he walked in, saw the watch on his wrist, the letter in his hand, the peace on his face. You read it, yeah, and you were right. I was ready. He sat down at the table. She poured him coffee, sat across from him. Thomas didn't die because of me, he said. He died protecting me. He knew about the FBI. He knew it was a setup, and he went anyway. To save me. I know, baby, you knew. Of course I knew. Thomas told me the night before. He made me promise not to tell you. Said you needed to forgive yourself in your own time. Evie's eyes were bright with the unshed tears. I wanted to tell you so many times, wanted to take that burden off your shoulders, but he made me promise, and I kept my promises to that boy, even when it broke my heart. Garrett reached across the table, took her hand. Thank you for what? For loving us enough to let us find our own way, for keeping Thomas's secrets, for keeping my bike running, for never giving up on me, for everything. That's what grandmothers do. You're more than a grandmother. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Evie squeezed his hand. We're family. That's what family does. We hold each other up. We keep each other's secrets. We wait for each other to come home, however long it takes. They sat in the kitchen, morning light streaming through the windows, coffee cooling in their cups. There's one more thing, Evie said. She stood, walked to a drawer, pulled out a folder. Legal documents. I had my lawyer draw these up last week. The land, the house, everything. It's yours, I'm signing it over. Garrett stood. Evie, no. Yes, I'm 89 years old. I'm not going to live forever. And I want to make sure you're taken care of. More importantly, I want to make sure Marcus Caldwell never gets his hands on it, even from prison. But no buts. This is your inheritance. Your grandfather's land. Your parents died for it even if they didn't know it. It's yours. She put the folder in his hands. There's enough gold under there to set you up for life. You could sell it, retire, never work another day, or you could do something meaningful with it. Build something that honors the people we've lost. Your grandfather, your parents, Thomas. Something that helps people. That makes a difference, Evie smiled. Your choice, but either way, the land is yours, free and clear. Garrett looked at the documents, looked at his grandmother, looked at the watch on his wrist, still reading 06:45. I know exactly what I want to do with it, he said, 6 months after that. Garrett stood in front of a newly constructed building on the land that had once been Evie's backyard. The Stone Family Community Center. 2 stories. Beautiful. Modern. Built with gold money but designed with love. The first floor was a senior center. Activities, classes, medical services. A place where elderly people could come and know they were valued, protected, loved. The second floor was a vocational training center, teaching young people trades, mechanics, welding, carpentry, the skills that could build a life. And in the back, a large garage where Garrett taught motorcycle maintenance to anyone who wanted to learn, free of charge. The grand opening was today. Evie cut the ribbon. 89 years old and still sharp as a knife, still fierce, still standing. This, she said to the crowd gathered, is what family looks like. Not just blood, but community. People taking care of each other. People standing up when it matters. She looked at Garrett. My grandson learned that lesson the hard way. But he learned it, and now he's teaching it to all of you. The crowd applauded. Braden was there, released early for good behavior and testimony against his father. He had completed his community service hours, enrolled full-time in social work, school, and now he volunteered at the center 3 days a week. He approached Garrett after the ceremony. Thank you, he said, for giving me this chance. You earned it. You did the work. I'm never going to be able to make up for what I did, what my father did. No, but you can spend your life trying, and that counts for something. Reed and Knox and Milo and Preston were there. The whole Brotherhood, wearing their colors, standing proud. They had donated money to the center, volunteered their time, taught classes, because Evie had asked them to. And when Evie asked, you said yes. Agent Torres came, brought her kids, gave a speech about justice and community and second chances. Maxwell won his Pulitzer for the expose, donated half the prize money to the center. Linda retired from the diner. Now she ran the senior center kitchen, best coffee in Nevada. Margaret taught reading classes, helped seniors get their GEDs. Even the 2 contractors who had been at the depot had reached out, apologized, offered to teach security and safety classes for free, trying to make amends. As the sun set over Reno, Garrett stood in the garage with the panhead. The bike was finally being ridden again, not to run away, to ride with purpose. Every Sunday, Garrett and the Brotherhood rode to the center, taught classes, fixed bikes for kids who couldn't afford them, built community. Evie appeared in the doorway. You ready for what? One more ride. Just you and me. She handed him a second helmet, climbed on the back of the panhead like she'd been doing it her whole life. Where to? Lake Tahoe. I want to see where your parents are buried. Want to tell them what you've built. Want them to know their son turned out okay. Garrett started the engine, the familiar rumble, the sound of home. They rode out of Reno as the sun painted the desert gold. An old man and his grandmother, a Harley that had waited 15 years, and a love that had survived everything life could throw at it. At Lake Tahoe, they stood by the memorial marker, Daniel and Catherine Stone, gone too soon, never forgotten. Evie placed flowers. Garrett stood with his hand on the stone. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back, he said. Sorry I didn't know the truth. Sorry for so many things. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore. Evie took his hand. They know, baby. They've always known. They stood together, watching the sun set over the water, the same water that had taken his parents, the same water Thomas had almost drowned in, the same water that had shaped every moment of Garrett's life. But now, for the first time, Garrett could look at it without pain. Just memory, just love, Just the understanding that some losses shape you, but don't have to define you. You know what the best part is, Evie said. What? Marcus Caldwell spent 50 years planning, scheming, killing, all for land he thought would make him rich. And instead, that land is helping people, building community, creating the exact opposite of everything he stood for. She smiled. That's real justice. Not just putting him in prison, but taking what he wanted and turning it into something beautiful. They rode back to Reno under stars that looked like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The panhead ran smooth, perfect, maintained with love for 15 years, just like Garrett, maintained with love, waiting to be ready, waiting to come home. When they pulled into the driveway, Evie climbed off the bike. One more thing, she said. She pulled an envelope from her jacket, gave it to Garrett. What's this? Open it. Inside was a deed to a small house, 2 bedrooms, walking distance from the center. I told you I was selling the big house, Evie said. Too many stairs, too many memories. This is our new place. Yours and mine, if you want it. Garrett looked at the deed, looked at his grandmother, looked at the watch on his wrist still frozen at 06:45. The moment his grandfather had chosen to stand, the moment Thomas had chosen to protect, the moment Garrett had chosen to stop running. I want it, he said. Good, because I already moved our stuff in, she grinned. Had the boys help while you were at the center today? Your room's the one on the left. I took the one with the better view. Garrett laughed, actually laughed. Of course you did. They walked into the house together. Evie immediately went to the kitchen, started making tea. Garrett walked through the small space. His room, simple, clean, a bed, a desk, a window that looked out over the desert, and on the desk a photograph in a new frame. His grandfather, his parents, Thomas, Evie, the Brotherhood, the community center, all of them together, all of them part of his story. He picked up the photo, felt the weight of it, the love captured in paper and ink. This was his legacy, not the violence, not the mistakes, not the running. This, family, community, second chances, standing up when it mattered, being the man his grandfather had died being the man Thomas had died protecting, being the man Evie had always known he could be. He walked back to the kitchen, found Evie at the table with 2 cups of tea. Sit, she said. We need to plan the center's first fundraiser. He sat. They talked, made plans, laughed. And for the first time in 15 years, Garrett Stone felt something he had not allowed himself to feel. Not just peace, not just home, but purpose. The knowledge that his life meant something, that his choices mattered, that the people he loved were safe and cared for and would continue to be long after he was gone. The watch on his wrist read 06:45, the moment that defined the Stone men, the moment they chose to stand. And Garrett was finally truly standing, not running, not hiding, not carrying guilt that didn't belong to him, just standing in his grandmother's kitchen, making plans for tomorrow. Because tomorrow was worth planning for. Tomorrow was worth living for. Tomorrow was worth everything his grandfather and his parents and his brother had given their lives to protect. And Garrett Reaper Stone, former national president of the Hells Angels, former runner, former ghost, now grandson, now teacher, now builder of legacies, was finally ready to live it.